Well, hello. Welcome to Integrated Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. I'm just finishing a Buffalo Sweat Stout. Oh, I should have cleared my throat before I started. Let me get rid of that. Uh, just finishing that because it's St. Patrick's Day. I want to talk about getting ready for war because it looks like that's where we're headed. I just got done. The reason that I'm out here celebrating is St. Patrick's Day, and I don't really celebrate it anymore. I used to all the time, but I just put a video up on the Patreon channel about the IRA and about how the Irish Republican side has and the Irish people have lived under oppression for 800 years and how they dealt very effectively with it. It's a great lesson that applies to us here. And for the more serious of you who are not yet with us over on Patreon, I suggest you go over there. Um, because I talk about some things that everyone should know. Um, I'm fortunate to have had, I'm not going to talk about much of my past or much of my life, but I'm fortunate to have lived a life that gives me insight into a number of different um, things that most people don't. Okay. Um, and they're very interesting things, and they contain many lessons about dealing with some of the things that we're dealing with now. So if this is for the serious people, Patreon is kind of it's a private club. It's for the real serious folks. And if you are and you're not over there, you need to be, and I don't know why you're not. For those of you who aren't serious about it, it's not going to do you any good. So don't bother. Save your dollar. Um, prepare for war. Why? Because they have decided, in my opinion, I think, they have decided that war is coming, that they want war. Now, who is they? They are the powers that be, the this and that, the everybody. We all know who they are, you know. They kind of changes all the time. Who are they? Well, the powers have decided that they want war. And if they've decided they want war, they're going to have war. And there's nothing that you or I can do about it. They wanted war. During the war that they called the Civil War. They wanted war during the Spanish-American War. They wanted war for World War I. They wanted war for World War II. They wanted war for Korea. They wanted war for Vietnam. They wanted war for the GWAT. They wanted war for all of those because it makes them billions of dollars and it helps them control the peons, the population, the serfs, which they think is most of us. And it is most of us, the others, who act like it. There are some of us who don't include ourselves and are determined to live good lives no matter what they do. But it's a way of making money and control. And those of you who haven't, it seems like I suggest this book all the time, but it's worth suggesting. If you haven't read Smedley Butler's War is a Racket, it's, I don't know, 40 pages long or something like that, if that. It's a pamphlet. You can probably get a free PDF, or you can get it on Amazon. Read it. Smedley Butler was a Marine officer who came to understand that war is a racket. Everything he was doing, getting all these medals for it, he got one or two medals of honor and a brevet, which essentially amounts to 3 medals of honor. And he finally realized, and he wrote a book about it, that he was just fighting for the pineapple plantations and the corporations and everything else like that. It had nothing to do with freedom. He wasn't saving the world for democracy, and neither was my dad when he fought, or my granddad when he fought. And many of yours the same way, right? Or any of my friends who went over to stop communism from dominating the world. It's why I never was tempted to participate in what I consider to be anyway, never wanted to participate in that because I kind of saw their game. But when they decide they want a war, they're going to have war. And it's up to everybody to prepare how to survive that and withstand what comes with a war. Now, there's always a case. We don't know to what extent the war's going to be, right? It could be that it remains a low level. We're going to keep this going for another 20 years because there's so much money to be made. It's like a disease. You stop making money when you cure it, right? Okay, so they don't want to. The money classes, was it Orwell who said that the only time that there's a foreign war is, and I won't get this exactly right, the only time there's a foreign war is when the money classes realize there's money to be made. That's right, money to be made on the bodies and the blood of the masses, of the normal people, of the working classes, of the people who consider themselves to be good Americans and who mistakenly think that means loyalty to a government instead of a country. None of our loyalty should be to a government, especially a government that has proved itself over and over and over and over again to be corrupt to the core. It's not where my loyalty is. Is that where your loyalty is? My loyalty is to God and my family and to what's right. America was founded on principles that were essentially about what was right. And don't give me that stuff about slavery was the original sin and all. Hey, the whole world did that, and there's more slavery today than there was back then, and nobody seems to be crying about that. And no, I'm not saying slavery was good. So get your head out of your ass if you're one of those that start taping. Are you saying that slavery is good? Idiot. I see something like that and you're gone. Our loyalty has to be to what's right. It has to be to our families. And that means that when a dictator or an oligarchy, no, I'm not talking about the Russian so-called oligarchy that we're supposed to think is such a big boogeyman because we're being fed all this disinformation. When we think that, when we're told we have to be loyal to this and give ourselves, our sons and our daughters up to be sacrificed on the heap of lies for money for the rich, we need to be able to say, you know what? But the point is this: how do you prepare for war? I don't mean get your battle belt. I don't mean get your guns and your ammo and this and that. Okay? And I'll say this, and I'm not cracking on anybody who is for the most part concentrated on guns and things like that. Hey, yeah, I got them for the right time. But let me ask you this. With what's going on right now, how are those going to help you? No, they're not. If you try to help your cause with those right now, you're going to spend the rest of your life in a little concrete box. Tell me what good that does for your family. How you prepare for war. Extreme preparedness. We talk about basic preparedness, right? Basic preparedness will see you through most calamities, right? Yeah. Shelter, food, water, defense, things like that. They will. That'll get you through most. A prolonged war, if it becomes something like a world war, if it becomes a nuclear war, and I don't foresee this becoming a worldwide nuclear war. If it is, I think it's going to be a regional nuclear conflict. But what do I know? I don't know any more than the next guy, but for the most part, he doesn't know any more than me. There are exceptions to that. There are some who know more than I do. But that would be my guess. I'm just taking a guess. You make your own guess. But for a prolonged war situation, and it looks like they're trying to push us. Okay, Europe's trying to push us, China's trying to push it, Saudi's trying to push it, and our own government is trying to push it. And it's not just the Dems, although the Dems are the war hogs and always have been. They always want to go to war because they always screw up the economy, they screw up the country, and the way to get the people's minds and their eyes off of all their failures is let's have a war and invite everybody to it. Well, how do you survive that? How do you prepare for that? And how you prepare for that is extreme preparedness. What do I mean by extreme? Well, take your basic preparedness. If you can live for a year without leaving your house, you better up that thing to about however much you can afford. I mean, however much you can afford. And you ought to be planning right now. If you don't already live in what you consider to be a safe location, and for this, I know a lot of you, some of you, and I know your intents are good. Some of you will say, why don't you get out of the suburbs? Why don't you do this? For these intents and purposes, the suburbs are probably a very good place to live. I'm not going to argue that point. If you disagree, that's okay. You live where you want to live. I'll live where I want to live. But in a case of a war situation, do you remember back in the Depression? Guess what? Farm families did all right. Not all of them. Some of them did. But people came to the city. Why? Because that's where the jobs were. Just keep that in mind. That's all I ask. I could talk for an hour on the pros and cons of all this stuff. So let's don't start a discussion or argument in one or two sentences that would really need all night to discuss, and wouldn't change anybody's minds anyway, right? Extreme preparedness. You not only need to get to the point to where you don't need any outside help for anything. That means stuff, it means people, it means skills, it means and it means plans. Okay, it means you're familiar with the old PACE, right? Primary, alternate, contingent, contingency, emergency. You're familiar with that. It's an old, everybody's throwing that around. You need all of those, and then you probably ought to put on one on the end of emergency with an oath. Okay. But you need all of those plans. What do you do if this happens? 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 And that comes down to dwelling, to vehicles, to food, to water, to people, to defense, to locations, to mobility, to all those things. Going from a preparedness stance to a self-sufficiency stance. And there's a lot of people. I mean, I guess it'd probably take me 3 or 4 hours to talk about all this. You don't want to hear me talk about like that, and I have a pizza waiting. But it really is. You have to see it down the road. Study what happened during the war. Study what I was showing my kids not too long ago a ration book that my mom had from World War II, where they all had to save up their sugar, right, and to make a cake. They could only get so much sugar and all sorts of things, gas ration cards. And when there was a family birthday coming up, they saved their sugar coupon so they could buy enough sugar to make a birthday cake or whatever. Things get tough, and they are going to use a common foreign enemy on us to get us to sacrifice. You see, that's how they herd the sheep. They say, oh my gosh, there's a lot of wolves out there. You all better get into this pen and do what we say, and we can't give you, what you used to have. We can't give you that sweet grass that's been out there you've been eating for your whole life. We're going to give you a little feed in. That's not enough. I know it's not quite enough, but you'll get by. And in order for all of us to get by, you have to do your part, which is to sit down and shut up and do what you're told. Right? Now is the time to separate yourself completely, or as completely as you can, from what I call the myriad of interdependent systems on which you now rely and over which you have no sway. You have no power. You can't control them, but you put your life under their control. I'm not saying you have to get out from under their control. Hey, I like my electrical lights. I like my running water. I like all that. But you have to be able to, like that, move to a point to where you don't need any of it. And I'll say this, because I've said this before. I was watching RWP made a video the other day in which he mentioned something that I say in my books, and that is, if it all goes to pot, I don't want to notice. Now, sure, I'll notice from all the whining and crying that I'm hearing all around me, and I don't mean that to sound mean. I'm just saying, hey, I'm sorry, but I don't want to notice how it affects my life or my children's life. I want it to go right on, and I say that in my books. And you should do that too. It's nothing that you can't do. If you haven't started, if you didn't start 10 years ago or 30 years ago like I did, if you didn't start back then, start now. Start now. You'll be better off a month from now or a year from now if nothing happens than if you hadn't, right? Start now. Because I'll guarantee you this. I don't have to guarantee you. You know it. Things are always happening. Things are always in a state of constant motion. You never know what's going to happen. It's like the powers that be. They've got a cattle prod, and they're going. You go, whoa, what's happening over there? And you get over there and, oh, what's happening over there, right? Hey, they're all going to do. They're going to have you under control as long as you let them have you under control. The thing is to get out from underneath their control completely. Now, I know that not everybody will be able to do that, but get out as much as you can. The more you are under their control, the more you're a slave. Who wants to be a slave, right? Preparedness is anti-slavery. And the people who are not prepared, you know what they're going to be? If it all goes down, they're going to be slaves. Slaves, think about that. I'm going to do a separate video on slavery. Because in my books, as it comes about, if we had a CME, an EMP, everything fell, guess what? Slavery's coming back. I'm going to do two. I'm going to do one on slavery and one on cannibalism. Those are the kinds of things that people don't like to talk about or really think about. Slavery's coming back, or it would come back in that situation. You make your decision. You want to be a slave or not? And if you don't want to be a slave, that means that you get busy right now and you start preparing extremely. Because I think some hard times are coming. Anyway, I'll let you go with that. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And we prepare extremely well today if we want to have any hope of having autonomy over our lives tomorrow. You all have a good day. I'm going to finish. It's almost gone. I'm going to finish this, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.